In the rest of this chapter, we're going to be talking more directly about the prokaryotes and the viruses that the title of the chapter tells us about. So you'll remember the chart that we filled out a couple of days ago about how to differentiate between all the different kingdoms. So today we're going to look more closely at those with prokaryotic cells in kingdom Monera, and so we're going to differentiate between Archaea and Bacteria. Now they do have some similarities, as we've already talked about. We talked about how they are all prokaryotic cells, which means that they do not have membrane-bound organelles. They do not have a nucleus. The DNA material is just kind of scattered throughout the cell, kind of floating around in the cytoplasm. They are going to have ribosomes because they have to make proteins, but those ribosomes are not membrane-bound, so they're not classified as a membrane-bound organelle. So all of these are prokaryotic cells. They are all one-celled organisms. We said that with the bacteria, they may live in simple associations with one another. They may live together as groups, but they all function as individual organisms, individual cells. In both Archaea and Bacteria, you're going to find some that are autotrophic and some that are heterotrophic. They're going to be both ways. They're also, and this is not something that we had mentioned before, but another similarity between the two is that they do all have cell walls. I think before we talked about how a lot of plants have cell walls, because when you did your labs on plasmolysis, you saw that the cell wall helps the plant cell hold the structure of that cell. Even if it loses or gains a lot of water, the cell is still able to hold its structure even with an influx of water, because that provides the pressure for it to be able to do so. These guys also have cell walls, and so that is a key similarity between them. But there are also some key differences, and that's what's going to separate them into the two categories, whether it's a bacteria or whether it's Archaea. There is a chart on page 362 in your book with differences in it. These are the differences I expect you to know, the ones that I have on the board behind me. So we're going to go through those. You don't have to know all the ones that she has in the book, but I do expect you to know these. So Archaea all live in extreme environments, whereas bacteria do not live in extreme environments. And I think I touched on this in the video when we were filling out that big, huge chart with all of the kingdoms in it. But an extreme environment is going to be something like in a steam vent, something that's going to be in very, very cold temperatures. So it's going to be, they may even live in places where there's no light, there's no oxygen, there's no, it's a really extreme condition that we would think would not be hospitable to life, but these creatures are able to live in these very extreme environments. Bacteria are not able to live in those kinds of environments, okay? I mentioned that both Archaea and Bacteria have cell walls, and there is a key difference in a component of those cell walls. Archaea have cell walls that do not contain peptidoglycan, whereas bacterial cell walls do have peptidoglycan. Now, you have no idea at this point what that means, and that's okay, because we're going to get to it another day or two. We're going to talk about this peptidoglycan in bacteria, talk about what it does, talk about why it's important. But for right now, all you need to know is that bacteria cell walls have it. Archaea cell walls do not have peptidoglycan. So that's the difference you need to know just for today. Don't worry about the details. We'll get to them in a couple more days. Okay. Finally, the other difference that I want you to remember between Archaea and bacteria is that antibiotics can kill bacteria, but they have no effect on Archaea. And that largely is due to components of the cell walls, because the way antibiotics work is they cause a cell wall to break down. And so when the cell wall of the bacteria breaks down, the cell kind of falls apart and can't function anymore, obviously, if it's going to fall apart. So antibiotics can kill bacteria, they cannot kill Archaea. So regardless of, even though there's another chart in your book that may have some other differences in there, these are the ones that you are responsible for, and those are the ones that I want you to remember. Now, one other thing that I want to point out to you, Most of it is going to be review, but I do expect you to know the structure and function of the bacterial cell. I gave you a coloring sheet to help you review that. I gave you some additional questions in your daily lesson plans to help you review the function of some of those cell parts. What are they supposed to do? There are a couple of cell parts in the bacteria that we have not had before. And so you'll have a couple more that you're going to have to learn. The capsule is one of them. We didn't talk about a capsule before, but a bacteria does have a capsule, so you'll need to know what a capsule is, what it does, what its purpose is. So make sure that you use that coloring sheet to review the structure and the function of the cell. Use the extra questions I gave you to review what the functions of those different parts are of the cell. I will ask you on your test to label the parts of a bacteria. So there is a diagram on page 363 in your book. I gave you a coloring sheet that has a diagram on it. I think I put yet another diagram in your daily lesson plans. I expect you to know the different parts of the bacteria and to be able to label them. So make sure that as you're studying that you're working on that and learning those different parts. Okay, so that is going to basically summarize our differences between archaea and bacteria.